clock violations and misuse of the time sequence.
They say you haven't truly lived until someone puts up a sign because of something that you did, like no snowboarding inside the bar. Well, in the NBA, they don't really put up signs, but that official rulebook has become thicker and thicker over the years thanks to some legendary players who were so good they found every way to benefit from loopholes in the original rules. So today we are taking a look at some iconic basketball players who will be forever remembered after they forced rule changes in the NBA. But first, a simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We will be giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or a MacBook Pro. It's all your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. First up, we have Wilt Chamberlain, aka the reason NBA players can't dunk on free throws. Well, that's right, Wilt Chamberlain was so athletic and his vertical leap was so good that he could actually set up his own alley-oop from the free throw line. He would stand at the top of the key, hurl the ball towards the basket, take 2 steps, and just fly right into the basket for the dunk. Well, this completely defeated the purpose of players working hard for their points by sending them to the line, so the NBA eventually banned crossing the free throw line when making charities. Chamberlain is also the reason players are no longer allowed to inbounds the ball over the backboard. This tactic apparently gave the big man a lot of easy points by simply waiting to catch the inbounds right under the rim for the easy slam and jam. It's really no fun to watch games where the odds are so grossly lopsided, and let's face it, these rules were only ever easy for Chamberlain, so the NBA had to make some adjustments. Wilt had to find other ways to score without these easy slam dunks, not that he had any problem with that. Next, why Shaquille O'Neal is also known as the reason zone offense is now allowed even in the paint. Once upon a time, NBA players were only ever allowed to play one-on-one defense in the lane. You can just imagine how much trouble this caused for the unfortunate souls who were assigned to defend the big Aristotle, right? No one man could contain O'Neal on the drive without needing extra hands, so the NBA decided they would allow zone coverage practically anywhere on the court. Just like Chamberlain, it's not like this new rule affected Shaq's monster numbers anyway. Another thing, have you ever noticed how those young NBA superstars are hardly able to break backboards and topple posts like in the good old days? Well, this doesn't mean that the league's current superstars are simply weaker. It's just that goalposts and backboards are now stronger than they've ever been, thanks to Shaq. He may not have been the first player to shatter the glass backboard, but he was definitely the only one who was strong enough to take down the entire post, damaging the entire hydraulic system that held up the basket. The NBA had to revisit the integrity standard of its equipment so many times to withstand Shaquille's otherworldly strength. Next up, George Mikan, aka the reason why defensive goaltending is a thing.
Basketball, a game of giants. And there's number 99, George Mikan, one of the greatest.
Would you believe that in the olden days, too much height was actually considered a weakness in basketball? Well, that's right. Small, quick men dominated the game so much that those above 6'2" were usually so uncoordinated, slow, and devoid of agility that the NBA didn't think that much of them. Well, that was before George Mikan happened and forever changed the way big men played in the NBA. Mikan was so good and so fast that he used to catch the opponent's ball right before it went down their rim. It constantly befuddled and frustrated enemy teams, and thus in the 50s, defensive goaltending was transformed into a foul. This basketball legend controlled the area around the basket to such an astonishing degree that in 1951, the NBA widened the free throw line to give other players a chance. Such was the impact of the NBA's first ever superstar, who led the then Minneapolis Lakers to 5 championships in 6 seasons, from 1949 through 1954. On several occasions during these years, the marquee at the Madison Square Garden would simply read, George Mikan versus Knicks, or George Mikan versus whatever team they were playing that night. Next is Charles Barkley and Mark Jackson, aka the reason the 5-second rule was invented. You might hear game announcers switching between calling the 5-second rule the Charles Barkley rule or the Mark Jackson rule. Either is correct because both Sir Charles and Mark love to maximize their large behinds when matched up against tall, stronger players. The strategy was to back down a player for 20 or so seconds using their large butts to create a wide space between them and the defender, then shoot or pass at the last minute. No defender wants to directly contact someone whose behind is protruded, so the league created the 5-second rule. Nowadays, players below the free throw line could only back guards down in the post for no longer than 5 seconds, no matter how gifted they may be in the rear area. Next we have the Pistons, aka the main reason hand checking is now outlawed, or something like that anyway. This is by far the most questionable rule change the NBA has ever come up with, and many sports analysts believe banning the hand check reduced the skill of today's players and the general excitement of NBA games. If you grew up watching the Detroit Pistons bad boys of the 80s, you know what good, clean, satisfying defense looks like. None of the slugging and thugging that's popular in today's games. The Pistons focused on brilliant defense that their quick hands upset Shaq and Kobe's heavily favored Lakers in 2004. The league had a remarkable and truly partisan reaction to this by outlawing hand checking, or the act of literally pushing an opponent or using one's hand to keep the other player's movement in check. The result is this usually bemusing sight of players unable to do anything when opponents drive to the rim, except lift their hands up to show everyone that they're not touching the other player. More often than not, large players have become unstoppable without the hand check. Well, almost. Defenders are now left to do the only thing they can, attack each other in the paint with body parts other than their palms, resulting in more brutality. But is it fair to blame the Pistons, whose only fault was that they were so good they practically trumped the league's favorites? Next is Kevin Durant, aka the reason why rip-throughs are no longer considered shooting fouls. This one's generally viewed as a change for the better. On a rip-through, an offensive player intentionally swings his arms into an aggressive defender and heaves the ball towards the basket to try to fish for a defensive foul. It's much like the check ball in volleyball, only a lot more annoying and resembles a cop-out, as if the player simply gives up and says, "Alright, there's no way I can convert when my defender's so good. Let me just take a wild shot that has no way of making it and blame it on the other player's hands." In the late 2000s, no other player abused this silly move more than Kevin Durant, who exploited the rip-through so much that it became quite impossible for the league not to address the problem. When KD is hassled by the likes of Tony Allen, you can almost predict the exact moment he would swoop his arms in an arc in his defender's arms to feebly fling the ball towards the rim. He's not the only one, though. In 2010, Kobe Bryant became the beneficiary of the most crucial rip-through call in NBA history, usually against Kevin Garnett and the rest of the Celtics, but it's certainly a dirty tactic we don't miss seeing. Next is Rasheed Wallace, also known as the reason why excessive technical fouls are now met with suspensions. Of all these so-called unbreakable NBA records, Wallace bagged one that could never, ever be repeated or exceeded in the league's foreseeable future. That's the record for having the most technical fouls in one season. During the 2000-2001 year, he had 41 Ts. Since then, the most technicals a single player racked in a season stands at 23. That's because Wallace's technicals became such a national headache that the NBA decided to impose a new rule that penalizes players with a one-game suspension without pay once he gets 16 technical fouls in a season. After that, the same player is suspended 1 game without pay for each additional technical foul. So if someone is a tech magnet like Rasheed was, they would literally run out of games in which to get technicals. If, like Wallace, they get a technical every other game, they would receive a suspension by game 32. That leaves them with 50 regular games to get 25 more technicals, but he would also be suspended every other game as well. Anyway, the rule's cool. It's not like new NBA players walk into the league and actually target breaking Rasheed's record. Next is Trent Tucker of the Trent Tucker Rule. Speaking of controversial rules, the NBA has the Trent Tucker Rule, which disallows players to take any regular shot on the court if the ball is put into play with under 0.3 seconds left in the game, or shot clock. This rule was born out of a Bulls-Knicks game in 1990. The game was tied at 106 with 1/10 of a second left on the game clock. Knicks had the ball. The only way the Knicks could convert and prevent extra time is to design a pass and shoot, which they did. Mark Jackson saw Tucker was open, so he inbounded the ball straight to him. Tucker turned around and hit a three-pointer literally before the buzzer went off. The game was awarded to the Knicks, but Phil Jackson staged a loud protest, saying there's no way to complete a play under 0.4 seconds. International tests and studies are on the side of the Bulls, showing that the fastest catch and shoot takes at least 0.3 of a second. Hence, the Trent Tucker rule was born. So there you have it, some players who forced rule changes in the NBA. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.